Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 3, Episode 35, I Sing the Body Electric, written by Ray Bradbury and starring Veronica Cartwright as Anne and Josephine Hutchinson as the grandma. And this is the only Twilight Zone episode that was written by Ray Bradbury, and in some ways that's kind of unfortunate because it would have been interesting to see how his material translated to a Twilight Zone format. I could see a lot of people really liking this episode, and also some that probably just don't buy into it, and that's because this episode has kind of a unique feel to it that doesn't really feel totally like the Twilight Zone. I'm kind of in between these two points of view, and I'll explain that as I go through the episode. So we start with three children. Their names are Anne, Tom, and Karen, but we'll be focusing mostly on Anne for this story. And they're listening into their father talking to a woman named Nedra. I'm not really sure what her relation to them is, and she's unhappy with the way that the children have responded to their mother's passing away a year ago, I believe it was. And the father saying things like this take time. And then, Nedra actually goes right up to the children and kind of scolds them a little bit, which I thought was a bit harsh. This woman's pretty crabby, I think. She's not a very happy person. So the father talks about how, he needs to get some help, and the boy brings down a science magazine, and it's an advertisement for, robots, basically. So we get through to the next scene, and after a very long opening, the father and the kids visit this place where they can make these robots, and we find out that they're going to make a robot grandmother, and they get a demonstration on how, all the different body parts and how you can pick different shapes and sizes and colors. They also get to pick the voice, which I thought that part was kind of amusing. And we find out that Anne doesn't really want this robot, especially if it looks like the mother, but the other two children do, and they basically make the robot themselves anyway, without the help of Anne, who runs out. So then we go to the next part of the episode, and the robot grandma comes. We're introduced to her, and they actually just name her grandma, which I thought was kind of nice. And you can tell that the two children, Tom and Karen, embrace her right away, but Anne's just not having it. And one of the things that I'm not wild about in this episode, there's this weird musical score, and when I say weird, I mean it doesn't really seem to fit the episode. It's way overly sentimental. I can understand it in certain scenes towards the end, but it kind of runs throughout a lot of the episode, and it just feels like they're trying a little bit too hard here. So anyway, we basically just see that Anne is still just not accepting of this lady, and we go to the next part of the episode, the second half, and the father talks to the grandmother. He's very concerned about how Anne, still hasn't accepted her, and the grandmother says, I can do a lot of things, I can give a lot of things, but until I get into her heart, she's just not going to accept me, and that often takes a lot of time. So then Anne basically comes down and she tells off the grandma, and she's pretty harsh. She tells her she never wanted her around and just to go away. She calls her a machine, and she basically just runs off. So Anne's definitely got some issues here, and this is handled okay. It's not too bad. So the grandma, keeps trying to get through to her, and basically Anne's just not buying it at this point at all. So the grandmother goes after Anne, and we find out what Anne's really upset about is that she says her mother lied to her and she left her when she passed away, and Anne just hasn't accepted this. So Anne gets really upset. She runs into the road, and there's a vehicle coming, and the grandmother actually saves Anne and pushes her out of the way. And for a second we think something might have happened to the grandmother, but she's a robot. Of course she's fine. So the grandma's okay, and then of course Anne now embraces her because of this, which seems a little bit convenient, kind of like a plot contrivance. I mean, all of a sudden all these issues with Anne have just gone away because the grandmother saved her. She just accepts her now. I would have liked to see this go a little bit deeper, but I guess the episode would have had to have been longer. I guess it works fine. It just seems like one of those convenient plot points to move things around. So now Anne basically accepts the grandmother. And then we get a Rod Serling narration, but it's not the closing narration. But I did think it was nice in that it worked. We see basically like a medley of the grandmother, with the children. Like, she's obviously reading to them and teaching her a whole bunch of lessons about life. And in some ways, I kind of wish the episode would have ended here. I think that would have been an interesting ending. But then others might find the actual ending to their satisfaction, which, I'll talk about that. So now we go forward in time, and the children are all grown up. And, we find out they're going to be out on their own and that the grandmother is leaving. And when they ask her why, she says, you don't need me anymore. I've taught you lessons. You've taught me lessons. And what she talks about is interesting, what she hopes happens for her in the future. And, maybe there's something to this robot grandma thing. I don't know. The last scene was kind of cool because we get to see kind of, what might happen to the grandmother. But in another way, I don't know if we really needed this because the episode didn't really explore her feelings that much anyway. They explored Anne's. So, I could go either way with it. It was fine, I guess. And then we do get Rod Serling's real closing narration, and this episode does some interesting things, but like I said, parts of it do seem a little too melodramatic. I guess if you're really into the older style of television, we would not get a TV episode like this anymore. It's got that old, 50s, 60s feel to it. Some people may like that, some may not. If nothing else, this episode is notable for being Ray Bradbury's only contribution to the Twilight Zone. So I guess if you're a fan of his, it's worth watching to see how they interpreted it, because it does have a different feel that's not totally Twilight Zone-ish. It feels a little bit more like a family drama type thing. So overall, I have mixed feelings about this episode, and I give I Sing the Body Electric a 2.5 out of 5. You can check it out if you want. I could go either way with it. And fans of Ray Bradbury, I would say should check it out. So 2.5 out of 5 for I Sing the Body Electric. And as always, thank you very much for watching.